Vicki Hogarth and welcome to Southwest Magazine. I am joined today by Robert Otto, who is chair of Canada First Basketball Incorporated, a non-profit group that is restoring the world's oldest basketball court. Thank you for being here today, Robert.
My pleasure.
And this is in our backyard. It's in St. Stephen. I know you've already received a lot of national attention for it, and we will be talking to Richard Fulton, who is president of your group, afterwards to hear a little bit more about the fundraising efforts, how that's going. But let's talk a little bit first about the history of this.
Yeah.
What does it mean when you say world's oldest basketball court?
Well, it is exactly as you say. It's the world's oldest basketball court. That's not to mean it's not the original court. Of course, the oldest basketball court would be the first one where basketball was played, which was in Springfield, Massachusetts. And everybody knows the story of James Naismith, the Canadian who invented the game there. And there were a couple of other courts that predate the court in St. Stephen, but none of those courts are currently in existence. They were either in buildings that were torn down or destroyed by other means. I think there was one that was destroyed by a fire in Montreal. Okay. So the historical research that we've done suggests that we have the world's oldest basketball court in St. Stephen, New Brunswick.
Okay, so that's another, Canada inventing the game, but also now having the world's oldest existing court. Yeah. What do we know about what made this court happen in St. Stephen, and what were some of the first games played there? Well,
yeah, so it's a really interesting history, and there's direct ties back to the original origins of the game. The court in St. Stephen was part of the YMCA. That was established there in the late 1800s, and the person in charge of the Y at the time in St. Stephen was Lyman Archibald, who played on Naismith's very first championship team in Springfield, Massachusetts, in 1891 when the game was invented, and then in 1893 came to St. Stephen to head up the YMCA and brought the game with him.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a very direct line from St. Stephen right back to the origins of the game of basketball.
So a lot of the games that would have originally been, we could have been international games, given how close St. Stephen is to the U.S.
Well, that's a good question, and it probably follows that indeed the first international game was probably played there, although we don't know that for sure. We're surmising that. But for sure, the first game was played on October 17th in 1893, and that's from records that we found through the St. Croix Courier.
I had the chance to visit recently, and it's definitely, we were talking about this before filming, you get chills when you go in there, especially because so much of it is so original. The floorboards, it's amazing. What was your first experience like seeing it?
Yeah, the first time I walked onto the court, I got chills like yourself. I could almost hear the squeak of the shoes and the yelling of people playing the game, and it was quite an experience. I'm a longtime basketball fan. I've played and coached over the years, and when I walked on that court, I really got a sense of the history that I was walking in.
Definitely a lot smaller than courts we are used to today, yeah. And there's a basket on the wall to, I guess, symbolize how it would have been originally played. What was an original game like back then?
So when people look at the building, they would probably not believe that there's a basketball court in it, let alone in the upstairs of the building. But the game was very different back then. Originally, there were 9 players aside, and 8 players aside, and there would have been, if you can imagine, quite a compact court with 16 players. It would have been, kind of pandemonium, I would think, and it probably wouldn't resemble the game that we know today. So fast-paced and covering so much ground so quickly.
So how the court was rediscovered. There was a time in history when we weren't even aware that this was part of Charlotte County for the most part. How did you come across this and make this discovery?
Yeah, so I think there was probably sort of an ebb and flow of the understanding of the existence of that court over time, and it probably became lost a little bit to the collective memory of the community, and then in little over 10 years ago, there was actually a fire in the front part of the building, And as people were going through and making sure that there wasn't any more damage to the building, and in the back they pulled up some carpet, and lo and behold, they found this hardwood court, and that's when I think the memories started to come back, and people said, "Oh yeah, this is the court." And from there, people got energized about I think what St. Stephen had at the time, and what we have now, and dug into the history of it, and here we are today.
What's that process been like? I imagine there'd be some articles from the St. Croix Courier going that it goes way back in history too.
Yeah, and so the history was primarily done by Darren McCabe, who does a lot of that kind of work in the St. Stephen area, and very knowledgeable. And dug through the archives and the microfiche of the St. Croix Courier, and also had to end up doing a fair amount of research about some of the other courts. Of course, when you're talking about whether or not we're the oldest court, you would have had to check all of those out too. So it was a big effort, and his efforts suggest that, we predate the next oldest court by probably about 2 months.
Okay.
And there's that court is actually in Paris, France, and it had sort of billed itself as the oldest basketball court in the world, but we think we've got them by 2 months.
Wow.
So now the court in Paris is an amazing entity all by itself. It's actually a replica of the original court that was in Springfield, Massachusetts, and ours is not like that. So the Paris site has its own sort of historical significance besides being a very old court. So
when I first heard about the oldest court being in St. Stephen, it must have been a few years ago that I first got wind of it. I think I was picturing something, I don't know why, outside, but a lot of people who now know it's in what we know is the St. Croix Vocational Center, former early days YMCA. What was it like discovering that it was there, and are people aware now of exactly where it is in town?
Well, I think, every day and every week and every month, more people are sort of understanding what we have there. And of course, more lately, our group has been having some success around some fundraising and the partnerships that we've put in place to try and move this project forward. So I think the word is getting around, but things like this TV program are going to help a lot, and so we're hoping that all those efforts are going to sort of spread the word about what we have.
Definitely. I think there's a lot of interest both locally on a national level too. You've been headlines all over. You've had some celebrities stop by already. We were lucky enough to be there when Maestro Fresh West, he just recently moved to New Brunswick and said that was one of the things he wanted to see, and he was so fascinated by this history being in New Brunswick. Are you finding that a lot of people are reaching out? Have you heard from, I'm thinking of big Basketball Canada fans like Drake who might be interested in stopping by or getting involved? That
would be fantastic, and we'd certainly pick up the phone if he called and have a chat. He's certainly a well-known international celebrity who loves basketball and loves Canada, so it would be a great fit. But we've, Basketball Canada is aware of the court, and they're aware of our project, and they're supportive, and they're a partner in helping us to get where we want to go with this. So.
The Raptors obviously brought a lot more interest into basketball in Canada. Do you think that there's growing interest? And I know that we're going to speak a little bit to Richard about what the next steps are in the plans. It's more than just a restoration. This is going to be an experiential center, and Richard will speak a lot to that. But do you think there's really this new interest in basketball in Canada, something that obviously has always been here, we just may have forgotten about and preferred hockey for a while?
Yeah, well, certainly I think basketball, its trajectory of popularity in Canada is kind of, I think, mirroring in some ways its popularity around the world. There's no doubt that the Raptors championship a few years ago was added to that. And, I think, now we see that Canada is the country that's represented, I guess, number 2 overall in the NBA with the number of players that are there. So I think the recognition of Canada as a basketball country is getting out there, and it started probably, the biggest bump probably is when Steve Nash, of course, Canadian, won back-to-back MVPs of the NBA. So, we've seen this sort of rising popularity, I guess, with the game in Canada, and I certainly think that's going to continue.
And do you think this center will bring a lot to St. Stephen in terms of tourism and just drawing people more to the area?
Well, I really hope so, and I think for basketball people and basketball fans and non-basketball fans, just to learn, about the history. The center is intended to be sort of I guess, to help celebrate Canada's contributions to this, very popular and growing sport around the world. And I watch the Raptors games and I see the commercial that talks about 75 years of the NBA, and the first NBA game, of course, was played in Canada. It was invented by a Canadian, and here we are with the world's oldest court, also in Canada as well. So it's every time that comes on, I kind of shout at the TV and say, the world's oldest court too.
What got you involved? What got you involved with this project? What was the draw to you when you heard about it?
Well, yes, when I heard about it, I thought that's just absolutely incredible. I mean, there's only one oldest court in the world, and it happens to be in the community that I live in. And being a longtime basketball fan and being connected to the game for ever since I was a kid, absolutely, I wanted to be involved and do what I could to help.
Well, we are going to talk to Richard next about the fundraising efforts, and I know there's an exciting announcement coming out.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining me today, Robert.
Welcome. My pleasure, Vicki.
That was Robert Otto, Chair of Canada First Basketball Incorporated. I am now joined by Richard Fulton, who is president of the same nonprofit organization. Thank you for joining me today, Richard.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I know you have an exciting announcement in terms of phase one of the fundraising goals to restore the world's oldest basketball court. Can you tell me a little bit about where you're at and have you met that goal?
Well, just to get a bit of a background, first of all, we anticipate the project in total is going to be something in the order of $10 million by our estimate. In order to get there, we need to know exactly what it is we're going to present and we're going to build. So we've broken the fundraising into two phases. A phase one, which was target of $1 million, and phase two, obviously, a target of $9 million. And the purpose of phase one was to acquire the buildings, first of all, court building, which was very important, and to do what we're calling design development phase, so that we can understand completely and exactly what the cost will be for what the facility will be. And that's really important to enter into phase two. So phase one was targeted with $1 million and was for primarily New Brunswick or New Brunswick connected business folks who believed in the area, believed in St. Stephen, believed in New Brunswick, and believed in this project. And that would allow us to get ready for phase two, if you like. And very pleased to announce through a whole lot of work that we have met phase one goal of $1 million of commitments to the project, which is pretty significant, even in itself, in a $10 million project. So,
congratulations.
Well, we've had a great fundraising team, and we're very happy to have them meet that goal.
What was the process of getting there? Was it easy to get people involved in such an exciting project?
Well, our team was led by David Ganong, who is well known in the New Brunswick community, of course, in the business community. And it was primarily personal connections, quite frankly. We did a lot of background work to help understand what the project could be. So we did business case developments and feasibility studies and I guess conceptual design of what it could be. We had some tremendous renderings done to say, not only are we talking about it, but this visually is what it could be. We have worked with Canada Basketball, who are an important partner, and all of that background work convinced our committee, first of all, which was really important, that we had a project that was viable and practical and could proceed. And took that information and I guess had personal contacts with business folks in New Brunswick and proceeded from there. And were very generous in their commitments, very significant.
So the first phase was to buy the building, and it's more than one building, I understand, correct?
Yes, the important building, of course, is the court building, and that was owned by St. Croix Vocational Center. And we've worked with them for a long time, frankly, as we've moved through this project. And it was very important to make sure that they were taken care of in the project. And because what they do in the community is every bit as important or more important than what we intend to do in the building. So with their help and support, we were able to come to an agreement for us to acquire the building, the court building. And that is now complete. So actually the town of St. Stephen owned the building. The town of St. Stephen had worked with us as partners, and they've created a Conserve the Court program, which allows people to make donations to the project, and that money is used directly for the project. So they now own the building on our behalf, if you like. So we're partners in that process.
Wow. So what happens after phase one? Obviously, this is a huge, huge step, and it must make it easier to go forward with future fundraising.
Absolutely. And of course, it provides us funds to do the things that are necessary. And after acquiring the building or buildings to do that, that was very important for us to qualify for any potential government funding in phase two, as well as to establish credibility within the community to say, yeah, you really own the court and you really have something here to work with now. So I guess another important part of phase two is what we're calling design development. And that will be pulling all of the aspects of the project together, whether that be the historic elements, the structural elements of the building, the floor plan that we have to work with, the history of the court, what the displays might be, what the experiential part of the project might be. So you need to put all of those things together in a package and say, this is what's possible and this is what it's going to look like, and this is, I won't say exactly what it's going to cost, but a much higher level of confidence of what the project might cost.
The end project, the final results, will be more than just a museum. Can you speak to that experiential element in what you intend to bring, especially for younger generations who are interested in basketball? This is going to go beyond just looking at the world's oldest court.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good point. That early on we understood that the court in itself is really the base of the project. That's why it's going to happen in St. Stephen. That doesn't exist anywhere else. But that's not enough. That will be important from the historic element to build on. But then we have another element which will have, I'll say, basketball pictures and displays and that kind of thing. But we also believe that we need to engage people in the project, because what we really want is when they walk out the door after the experience is to say, that was really fun, we're coming back. Because we want repeat folks to come and see what's different. So that experiential piece has to be developed. But a bunch of ideas that we have, first of all, you can have experiential displays where you interact with the displays either visually or have someone respond to you electronically. But we're looking at virtual reality, augmented reality with, who knows, maybe you put on the goggles and the helmet and you walk through the court and James Naismith is in the corner talking to you about the history of the game, or there is an NBA player in another part of the court talking to you about basketball. So, and then there are, I'll say, games or interactive things where people are entertained. And it's really important that we deal with all ages. So we're even talking about a kiddie corner kind of thing where the kids can have a great time playing while the parents or the older kids walk through the facility and enjoy it.
I think what I couldn't get over from the tour that you gave me recently was just, hey, how much the game has evolved, and then in some ways how much it is the same. It really is rooted in something so simple and so easy. And the same goes for St. Stephen as well. You really feel like you're walking into this piece of its past and getting another idea for how the town operated back then. Imagining it as an old YMCA, you get a feel for how maybe our ancestors lived in the area.
I think it's really important to understand that this is being developed by a not-for-profit group of individuals. And our goal is to engage the community and benefit the community and the province of New Brunswick. So, for instance, we hope that businesses will, I guess, interact with the court. It's not just going to be a building. Hopefully it's going to reach out into the civic center, into the community, into the trail across the waterfront, so that people, when they come into the community, are immediately grabbed by it and say, this is important, we have to, and it's more than the court, it's the whole experience in the community and in the province.
Couldn't be a better location. You're right by a sports bar. You're across from the Garsland Civic Center too, so you can see that there's obviously something that will evolve there.
Just imagine a tournament or a gala event held at the Civic Center, and hopefully we'll have a court there someday. And then the winners of the kids tournament go to the facility and walk through the experience center and do all of that at the same time.
So I guess you must be in talks with the town about just how much this could bring to the area in terms of tourism, and obviously there's a lot of history buffs that come to the area anyway, but this kind of bridges a gap that is both interesting to people interested in history, but also younger generations who just care about basketball.
That's really important, and we're of course close to the east coast of the U.S. where a huge number of basketball fans live and breathe, and we want them to come into be drawn by this attraction, but then say, well, let's carry on into the rest of New Brunswick and maybe into Nova Scotia, or let's experience other parts of the province. And that's really important to us.
What's the timeline for phase 2? How many years do you think it will take to meet the goals that you have?
Tough question. We would all love it to be next year. It isn't going to be next year, because we have to do a whole lot of work to really understand what the potential is and to prove to ourselves the really business case is there. And then we have to raise the money, which is $9 million, which doesn't come easily, and we need some government assistance, and that takes time, it takes process, and then we have to start building the thing, and that could take a while. Realistically, wish it was a year. It's probably 3 or 4 years before the doors open, and then we have a whole lot of work to do.
Some of the most successful projects, the fundraising is from grants, but also big donors, but also small donors as well. Are you finding that there's a lot of interest on every level, be it a government grant to a big donor to just people in the community stepping up to do their part?
We haven't, at the very beginning of the project, we asked people in the community, in the basketball community and in the local community, and frankly, Aroko, one of the local businesses, stepped up and provided us some seed money that allowed us to do things like a business case evaluation or those kinds of things to convince ourselves that it was something that could move. We have kept the profile fairly low to this point because we wanted to make sure that we could get phase 1 completed so that we could proceed with the project. And our confidence is growing, the confidence of the project is growing, and now we're starting to reach out and engage the local community more. But you're right, it's going to be governments, big donors and small donors, all going to be very important, not only from the financial perspective, but also from the buy-in perspective. We really want New Brunswickers to believe that this belongs to them. This is their facility.
I mentioned to Robert, you definitely have national interest, but I think it goes beyond that. I can tell this will be of international interest. I'm wondering what drew you to the project when you heard about it. What made you have to be involved?
Frankly, because of what it can do for the community. Most of us are in it because of the community. That we believe is going to be very, very important to develop the community. In the community, not just St. Stephen, but St. Andrews and St. George and southern New Brunswick and all of New Brunswick. That's why we're in it.
I definitely think this is going to be one of the biggest stories for New Brunswick of 2022. So I have to thank both you and Robert for doing what you're doing and giving us something to really give us hope and excitement this year.
There's a tremendous team working on this, tremendous number of people and tremendous quality of people working on this project. So we're very thankful to all of them.
Now, if someone is at home and interested in finding out more or getting involved or maybe even making a donation for phase 2, do they find you online? What's the best way to get in touch?
Well, first of all, there is the town can serve the court if people wish to make a donation, but we have a web presence at worldsoldestbasketballcourt.com, so that's available, and we can be reached in any of that. And we're really just developing those things now, so it's kind of stand by, more of that coming
All right.
in the very near term.
Thank you so much for being here today, Richard.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
My guests today have been Robert Otto and Richard Fulton of Canada First Basketball Incorporated. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.